Rebecca. I'm here with Nick from Alpha HGV and we're going to be asking him a few questions. So Nick, can you briefly tell us what Alpha HGV is?
Alpha HGV is a training company in the haulage industry, as you can probably tell from the name. What we're trying to do more and more is embrace technology with regards to our training. So training in the industry is kind of not outdated as such, but it's not necessarily very progressive. So when I first started dealing with Redbox, which I think we're going to come on to in a little bit, we were looking at virtual reality solutions. This is kind of escalated now into looking at simulators and that kind of thing. So primarily our offering is classroom-based training, and we're trying to bring technology into that and move the industry forward in that respect.
So what challenges do you currently face in HGV training?
One of the biggest challenges in HGV training, and this is where VR comes in massively, is engagement. So we've got a situation where we've potentially got people who are reluctant to be in a classroom, who need to take this training for various reasons, partly because they legally have to, secondly because as best practice it's really important that companies are seen to be doing that kind of thing. So engagement's massive, so if we can introduce technology, virtual reality in particular, that's another reason why people might want to do training with us as opposed to your standard classroom course that's kind of should be left in the past, in my opinion.
So have you used any simulation or VR in your company before?
Yeah, so at the moment we're using VR in a lot of our training, particularly in 2 or 3 courses where we're putting drivers in scenarios in a safe environment. So within the industry, we have particular courses where they might be expected to, for example, go on a bike. Difficulties with putting 24 drivers, for example, on a bike. You might get some reluctance to do so. You might get some drivers who can't necessarily do it for fitness concerns. There's also a danger element. What we do by introducing virtual reality into the training environment is we create this immersive environment whereby they can still have the same type of training, but remove the risk or any reluctance or inability to carry out that training in the first place. So that's where we've used virtual reality previously. We're looking at ways that we can move that forward. So things like hazard perception, and dealing with issues such as bridge strikes, which is a huge problem for the industry. We think VR can come into play there as well.
So you tried the simulator before when we came in. What was your first impression?
First off, I was blown away by how I was getting the experience, not just visually, but how the simulator felt. That was probably the most overwhelming thing. Visually, it's fantastic as well. So I think with regards to the requirement for any kind of software on here, what you're going to need is something that's very realistic, and that thankfully is very realistic. What that did is highlight how incompetent I am as a driver. However, everything else about it was fantastic. So the first thing was how it felt, almost more than how it looked actually.
So how realistic did it feel compared to other driving scenarios?
What I really liked about it was actually how reactive it was. So it felt massively realistic. So things like kind of spatial awareness was really impressive, and I think that's where the virtual reality element of the simulator came in. So when you're using screens, you can't quite get that same immersion, and when you're thinking about spatial awareness, where you are positioned on the road, where road furniture is around you, where other vehicles are around you, that's where this made a huge difference.
I think you hit something before, didn't you? You really felt the kickback from that.
I did, and I'll hasten to add, I got asked to deliberately hit it. I did not hit that by accident, but didn't I know about it as well? Yes.
Did anything surprise you about the experience?
I think, going back to the main point actually, was it wasn't just a visual experience, and I think the surprise was the realism of it. So sitting on that simulator, feeling my seat move, feeling the pedals move, feeling the steering wheel move, all of that was surprising about the quality of it.
So can you see a system like this being used in your day-to-day work life?
So for me, possibly not used in my day-to-day work life, but within the industry, when you're doing anything training related, where you're either training new drivers or you're dealing with issues that experienced drivers have got, or you're doing any kind of refresher, I can certainly see that companies would be interested in something like this. First and foremost, and we'll go back to what we talked about with the VR, you're putting somebody in a completely safe situation. So you're creating an environment where they might have struggled in, whether it be driving in the rain or driving in particular urban areas, something like that. But instead of sitting in that cab where there is a real threat because you're driving a huge vehicle that's potentially very dangerous, you're sat in a completely safe environment. Going back to what I said before, that's where the reality is really important, because you need that gap between reality and this environment to be so close that it hits. So for me personally, this is something that I think I wouldn't necessarily use, but I just know that people out there would be using it because there's a huge need for it. And I'm only saying that because we do classroom training and we don't really get involved with the actual driving training. Yeah.
So is there anything you would add to it to maybe improve it?
So the main thing I would add actually is if I was driving a truck, I would expect to have a Greg's coffee and probably a sausage roll. So ideally, if that could come with the simulator, that would be quite important. With regards to adding to it, I know we've spoken a little bit about just taking it to the next level of realism with the truck. So that would maybe be the next step on from this, but it's not the be all and end all, I've got to say, yeah.
So do you think something like this could help recruit younger drivers?
Great question, and absolutely. So if you're taking this to any kind of trade fair, any kind of roadshow, anything like that, and you're looking to encourage young drivers into the industry, this is something where they can sit and draw attention straight away. Firstly, it's so eye-catching and engaging, and there's a massive novelty factor to it as well. I can't imagine anybody, or hardly anybody, has seen anything like this. And this jump from, it's almost like gamification, and I don't want to go down that route too much because I understand it's far more serious than that. But you've got a young person who's used to being on their Xbox and they're playing racing games. Well, this takes it to the next level, but it joins it up with reality, and I think it definitely could encourage young people to come into driving, yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you. No, pleasure, yeah.